Hello, everybody. My name is Ian Kirkpatrick. I'm an author, idiot, and loin streamer, and today we're going to be doing another pretty chill talk in general, but this is going to be about what does strength look like? And I thought that it was an interesting subject a while ago just because of how people kind of show character strength in stories or attempt to show character strength in stories. And we kind of know what the generic or the first go-to for what strength looks like, which we're going to talk about in a little bit here. But there are many different ways in which somebody can manifest strength, which I think is actually a very interesting subject to talk about. So that's what we're going to get into today. However, before we get started, number one, if you enjoy what I do here on the channel, please remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Consider becoming a member. The second thing is if you would like to be featured on the channel, check out the links down in the description below. The number one way to be featured is through Lamwai, the monthly prompt writing contest, where I give you a prompt, you write a short story using that prompt, and on the first Monday video of the month, we bask in your creativity, your creative genius. And then the second way to be featured is if you are an indie author and you have a book out or a book that is coming out, if you submit the first chapter and the cover to the Fresh Meat feature, that first chapter will be read here on the channel to just give a little bit of a tasting, a sampling to those who want to check it out, and hopefully they'll go and look at the rest of it because you will have impressed them with your style, with your grace, with your flair, with the horrors that you have unleashed upon them. And the third thing is if you'd like to check out any of my books, they're available at any of your favorite places to get books, including the local library upon request. My newest novel, Body More Zero, is coming out at the end of this month. It's only about a week and a half away at this point. If you haven't gotten your hands on the ARC yet, which is out there, you can get the live version, and eventually there will be an audiobook. I have just been struggling, but hopefully audiobook before the end of the year at this point because I am so behind schedule. Body More Zero features these two gentlemen right here, which will be talked about a bit in the video today. I'm going to try not to get into too many spoilers, but we are going to talk about what strength looks like in these two men because it looks very different. It's as different as their appearances. And with that said, let's get into the topic at hand. So probably a lot of us, if you talk about what does a strong character look like in popular fiction, could come up with characters and what those elements of strength look like. How do people defer or attempt to show strength as a first go-to?
I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up and make a statement. I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up and make a statement. I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up.
And for me, what comes to mind is no emotions or less emotions. They're not emotionally fragile. They're very stable, sometimes stoic, unflinching when it comes to killing. They even maybe hold back their emotions or don't have emotions when they kill, though sometimes you might have the very strong person with the tears of passion. The destroyer of worlds often comes up. How often do we have Grimshaw-style characters that are showing their strength and wooing the female character by saying how they could destroy all of the universes and would destroy all the universes and all of the kingdoms for their lover? That also happened in Polaris Rising. That is also happening in Something So Lovely, which I'm reading right now. And it continued, and it happened in Fourth Wing, and it will continue to happen as this destroyer of everything, being the top dog in physical strength and the ability to destroy all is often a symbol of that strength. Nothing stops them. Nothing can stop them except for the very, very specific love interest that maybe can. And that also, oh, Pawn and the Puppet had that. I think it happens a lot. And like, I get the trope. There is absolutely a trope of the taming of the shrew or the taming of the beast, if you will. It goes in both ways. It looks a little bit different, but there's a little bit more. There's a little bit more nuance to that, I think, than gets covered in very bad fiction. But, you know, you can't expect nuance in bad fiction. And just, they are the best at everything, everyone. And often, even with this show of strength, what's happening in more recent contemporary fiction, I'm not sure if it was as big of a trope in past fiction, but it's to make the character a victim of a lot of atrocities, but to show that they are not affected by said atrocities, because that then shows strength. Is, oh, all of these bad things happen to them, and they're going to keep going no matter what, and they're not even going to show any symptomology of having been affected by that thing, because having been hurt by that thing and showing no pathology out of it somehow makes them strong. It actually kind of just makes the use of the trauma feel superficial in an attempt to get your sympathies and to manipulate you, but that's a different subject altogether. That is not me saying that somebody who overcomes their trauma or lives through their trauma is not showing strength. They are, but I'm talking about the poorly written cheap shots that use it to say, let me pile on all of this stuff onto one character that then does not show through how they make decisions, through how they react to things. It is just said so that they can live through it. And then they're strong because they've lived through it. I'm currently thinking of Bonnie in Guns and Smoke right now, where she just had a lot of stuff piled on her and you never saw it come out of her behaviors. This also isn't to say that you can't do anything in fiction. This is just an examination of what strength looks like, because personally, I don't think strength only is this strong, can beat everybody up, has to beat everybody up, has little or no emotion, and especially is stoic in the face of murder. If you look at stuff like Lightlark, where you have Isla kill a bunch of people and then write in the stone a message in their blood warning other people to not try to do that to her or she's going to come for you, that's not badass. That's not strength. That's psychotic. But a lot of the time, stories default on making a character physically stronger and able to beat everybody up better than everybody in order to show strength. And while battle strength is one way to show strength, it is not the only way to show strength. And what's actually very interesting to me is if you think about how to create a complex and deep character, if you take something's strength too far, it often becomes an actual weakness. And I think that's where you start seeing the complexities in building a character, because you've taken that strength so far. So go with me on this. We'll use an example that everybody likes to mock. What is the thing that people say when they're in a job interview and it's like, what is your biggest weakness? And the joke answer is, oh, I work too hard, as if that can't be a weakness. But imagine this. Imagine you are so hardworking, you are such a workaholic that you end up absorbing other people's work because you're so dependable, you're so fast, you always get stuff done. And so people just stop depending on other people because they don't get stuff done. So they bring it to you and you just continually get it done. And you do get it done. However, you are feeling the stress. You are feeling the resentment of being the one person on your team who is doing all of the work. You are counting all of the work that you're doing. You're looking over there at the people not doing the work as you are stressing out about all the work that you are doing. You are having an inability to balance your work and your life because you have all of this stuff that you have to do and you feel responsible for this stuff, even though you shouldn't be doing 80-90% of the work. And so then that becomes being closed off, that becomes being aggressive, that becomes alienating yourself from not only your coworkers, which whatever, they're coworkers, you get the work done, but from your family or your friends, because you're just so stressed out and you don't put your foot down on anything because you're just hardworking. Like, this is what you are at work to do, but it builds and builds until your health is failing, your social relationships are failing, your work relationships are failing, and then finally, even though you are very, very, very hardworking, you're let go because you're considered not social enough for the team because you work too hard. And then that just carries over into more resentment of you did all of this work and then you just got kicked out anyway for not talking to your coworkers enough while you were covering their buns on their work for all of those months. And that is a point when your hardworking asset can actually become a weakness because all of these other areas have suffered and maybe you don't even notice that it's suffering and you just feel that responsibility on yourself. So if you take anybody's strength in creating a complex character and take it to an extreme, that is usually where you will find a weakness. And if you're writing a complex story, that story will often use those characters' strengths to bolster them and as a way to challenge them and something that they have to then overcome and learn not to go too far in either direction of not too little of something, but not too much of something, you know? And so I'm going to go through my characters, a bunch of my characters from a bunch of different things that I have both published and have not yet published. Some of them are still works in progress. Half of them are still works in progress. One of them, I'm going to talk a little bit about Isabella Bliss, but I still have a lot to figure out about her since I'm still writing the first draft. But maybe I will learn a little bit more about her as I talk about her in general. We'll see. The first we're going to talk about are a couple of characters from Dead End Drive. One of the main characters is Gavin Acre, and he is the butler, the head butler, the son of the former Mr. Acre, who was the former butler, and the former butler was an alcoholic, as you might imagine. I say imagine because it's a trope. And one thing that Gavin has about him is that he is implied psychopathic. Is his father always saw something wrong with him, emotionally detached, and in a way that helps him because he doesn't emotionally respond to the horrors of the situation that he is in. However, because of the emotional distance that he has, he doesn't relate well to other people in general. And one of the things that he actually has to learn is how to give himself purpose and focus so that he is not like murdering Agatha's cats all the time. Or, in this case, it almost became Kelly in a way because he became jealous of Kelly, but then he saw his father, he saw his father doing some things, and that's not where he wanted to be. And something that helped give him purpose was learning duty and learning order. And that was then how he formed a relationship with Bertrand, the gardener. And you see him use that. What he does is very mechanical. And the way that he teaches and talks to Kelly is very, this is what your duty is and this is what you need to do. And that becomes also a strength because Kelly, as a child who was not given any order growing up because he was just treated as one of Agatha's other cats, even though he was a human boy, a little boy, he doesn't have a sense of duty or purpose or order or how to act. And you have to help him get into that. And it's going to be much harder for Kelly because of how he has grown up. And now being a teenager has to learn about order and responsibility and respect. And what is going to help that is going to be Gavin's more strict rules. Part of Kelly's strength is his innocence to the whole situation because he didn't really grow up being educated and trained socially like the people around him. He wasn't given any responsibilities. He was kind of just treated like a pet to the woman who adopted him because Agatha felt like she had failed both of her daughters and wanted to try again. But because of her own trauma that she was never really able to recover from, she was also not really able to be a good mother to Kelly. And this results in him being fairly immature and fairly whiny, and it results in him being a fairly immature, like below his age a bit, 14-year-old who is much more naive and innocent than he probably should be, though 14-year-olds are generally more naive than they realize. He does read a bit younger than his years because of that. And the naivety helps him because it keeps him from being as cynical as he could be. And the cynicism is what could turn him into, well, what some of the other villains in the book are. And that naivety also leaves him to be a sitting duck, to trust the wrong people and to not know who to trust, and to leave him to be carved up physically and or emotionally if he trusts the wrong people. Then you have Anna, who is very quiet. She's very demure. She's very much a focused, supportive role, but she is always thinking ahead. And it is because of that thinking ahead and because of her focus on being a unit, not just an individual, but a unit, that gives her strength. It also is a weakness because she knows that she cannot really take things on head to head. And you see that in the book as she works her way through the circumstances of the will reading, and she can't really do things alone. If you look throughout the book, you'll notice that Gavin and Anna are constantly doing pretty much anything that they do together. Her weakness then comes more in the case that people underestimate her as being not her own person because they see her so much invested in other people. However, that is a choice that she makes in order to be a team with other people, not that she doesn't have her own personality or her own feelings or her own opinions. In fact, she kind of is, I don't want to say manipulative, but she moves in the shadows and you see her influence even though she isn't forward about her influence. But that can cause people to believe that she doesn't have a voice. So her weaknesses are not are not as straightforward. They are, though, this underestimation of her personally, where she is often dismissed as not being her own person, as not having her own voice, as not being seen as a real person. And that goes into like her background as well, where she was the first daughter and the half daughter. This is suggested in Dead End Drive, but it's going to come out in the prequel to Dead End Drive that is more about the relationships of these people in this house, with Agatha still alive. And Anna was the half child between Agatha and Bertrand, but a secret half child because they couldn't actually legally be together. And for social reasons, Agatha could not be with a man who was from another race. So then Anna was born and then kind of just ignored by Agatha because she couldn't acknowledge that child was hers. So Anna grew up knowing her mother, living near her mother, but never actually being able to interact with her mother because her mother even just completely blocked out that she was there. And the only ways that Agatha really interacted with Anna was through a distance, through a suggestion. And that's one of the ways that Anna learned about all these secret passageways in the house. So her character in general is a constant of feeling like not a full person, and people judge her that way as well, as if she is just the ignored bastard child of Agatha, or the maid who has no personality outside of serving Gavin. And she is not physically strong, so she has to use wits, as you will see in Dead End Drive if you haven't read it. When she goes against some of the other characters who are obviously physically stronger than her, she cannot take them on one-to-one, and there are different outcomes that would have happened to her if things had gone a little bit differently than they do in the book. So I'm not going to get too into that, but I could answer questions on that if the composition was different at the end. When you get into the Bodymore series, we're going to talk about the 5 leading characters. That is Joey, Jag, Wayland, Ralph, and Casey. Though you could argue that Stone is also a leading character because he is very central in all of the books. And I would say, if we're going to cover this really, really quickly with Detective Stone's weakness is that he is too trusting, and he's skeptical, but he's the type that believes he should give people a chance because he is curious, inquisitive, doesn't understand everything, doesn't necessarily believe everything people say, but he tries to get closer to the truth. And though he doesn't believe that criminals brought in or the people who are suspects are going to necessarily tell him the truth, he does believe if he listens to them, then he will get closer to what the truth is or what those suspects think the truth is, because he also doesn't necessarily believe he's always dealing with somebody who is emotionally or mentally stable, we should say. But that also leaves him going into dangerous situations that he probably should not be getting into because he's going out on a limb for people. And you see him do this with Joey, and you see him do this with Ralph in Bodymore Zero a couple of times when you're like, he does wait and see a little bit. Now, when it comes to Joey, one of her biggest strengths is her loyalty and her steadfast loyalty and her bravery. And so she will go head first into dangerous situations for the people she loves, for the people she cares about, because one of the reasons is she has such a low level of self-worth and self-esteem that she believes the people she loves have more value than she does. And so she is willing to risk her entire being to take care or to defend the people that she cares about. Now, the problem with this is it's great, but she is loyal to a fault, which you see with Wayland. She is loyal to the point where she is ignoring and dismissing her boyfriend, and it's a person who is a person that she really obviously does care about. And when push comes to shove and it makes her and Jag makes her step back and think about what she is doing, she realizes what she is doing to him, and she realizes that she doesn't think that she deserves him. But at the same time, with her loyalty to a fault, she doesn't want to be the one to abandon anybody. And as you read into the story, you learn that one of the reasons why she refuses to abandon anybody that she is loyal to is they have to be the ones to leave her is because of what happened between her parents. And she doesn't want to be to any of her friends, to anybody she cares about, what her mom was to her dad, especially if you know what her dad did after the situation with her mother. But this leaves Joey into making some very, very, very bad decisions, going into situations that she should not go in, that any rational, reasonable person would not put themselves into, and overall having to learn where her own boundaries are and to be self-aware. And she is only lucky that she has somebody as patient as Jag, who sees through her difficulties to the person that she is outside of those strains. A lot of people would not have the patience for that, which takes us into Jag. He is insanely brave, but his really big strength shows in both his stability. He is like an anchor. He is very grounded. He's constantly pushing on Joey to get her to look at reality as it is, and is very straight with her with what he sees. But he is also very patient. And it is that strength of his groundedness and the patience that can become his own weakness, because he might be too reasonable in what he is seeing, that he reasons himself out of walking away from what could be a dangerous or a bad situation, because he goes, well, I think that this can be saved because I understand why this is happening. With Joey, he feels a specific familiarity since his own father was an alcoholic, and so he's gained that patience and understanding that when somebody is showing their demons are not the thing that defines them. And so he has more patience. Now, when that becomes a weakness is when you are so patient with somebody that you continually see these demons put their heads out there, and then they do things to you and put your life in danger, which Jag does end up getting his life in danger because of the amount of patience he shows for Joey, because of his love for Joey. And then we get to Wayland. And this is the big difference between Wayland and Jag, and how their interactions are so different with Joey, and where the positive is with Joey and Wayland. Now, there's a little bit of a spoiler here because of the way that things go out, but Wayland's patience and his unconditional love for Joey are his strengths. I mean, you could just call it a puppy crush. You could call it a schoolboy crush. You could call it desperation, however you want to interpret Wayland, because he did love Joey and does love Joey. And that even comes in with the ending of book 2, with the way that book ends. However, Wayland's strength in his love, in his pure love, in his patient love for Joey, and his understanding of Joey, it actually becomes a source of weakness for him, because he is so patient with Joey that he doesn't want to push her. He doesn't want to cause her harm. And that's where him and Jag are different, is where Jag will start seeing, I mean, Jag doesn't do it in the first book because he's letting Joey do what she freaking needs to do, because he's not entirely sure how hard to push her. And then he starts feeling his way out on how far to push her. But Wayland doesn't ever push her, doesn't ever challenge Joey. He always has made himself be there as the comfort person for Joey to come to when she's having trouble. And that's his weakness, because he would also never be able to push Joey back into reality, to challenge her, to make her look at herself, because he wouldn't challenge her. And you see that at play with them in the second book, when Joey and Wayland are very much enabling each other, and it's always Jag and Joey that are challenging, and it's Jag that is making Joey reflect on who she is and what she's done and what reality is, and then bringing her back down. Whereas everything you see between Wayland and Joey is they love each other, but they enable each other. Ralph and Casey are side characters in Bodymore 2 and 3, and then they are the main characters of Bodymore 1. And Ralph has this deepest, unending layer of love, of unconditional love and patience and kindness and goodness and hope. And it's the type that he doesn't fight back. He can't fight back. He doesn't want to do harm. No matter the kinds of harm that have been brought to him or what people do to him, he is not going to be corrupted like that. And that puts him in this disadvantage of where he can't really fight other people off. And you see that in some of these situations in the book with the main villains that he runs into in Bodymore 0. And then you'll see it more in the future, and that's how he gets marooned in the bar. I mean, they are dealing with supernatural creatures that he cannot fight against. But that is also where Casey comes in as his counterbalance. But Ralph goes to that point of compassion and mercy that is actually dangerous, and he's pathologically unable to fight back because of how he has been harmed and how people have hurt him, and he can't bring himself to fight back. I know this is going to be controversial, but the level of patience and love that he has then has him unable to determine how to respond to the way that the things that Casey does when he comes back. Now, there's not really much that you can do when you are somebody like Ralph, looking at somebody like Casey who just murdered people in front of you, and you're like, I mean, you're not stopping them, because what the frick would you do? Casey would just beat you if he doesn't murder you because he's stronger than you. But that makes Ralph really not able to handle extreme conflict or physical conflict or really emotional conflict, because if you see throughout in Body Morris 2, 3, and 0, he really is conflict avoidant. Even when he is under attack, and he does think fast, and that's not to say that he is not active, because you see him defending himself. However, he is conflict avoidant, and when put in the face of conflict, he has a harder time dealing with it. And because he can't do harm, he has to find other ways to get out of harm's way when it comes straight at him, which is going to be something very interesting to see in Grief Eater. Then you've got Casey over here, who is hot-blooded, hot-tempered, berserker man, biggest ego that there is. And that is, I mean, it's great because it makes him unflinchingly challenging. It makes him able to take on things that you would think he should not really have the confidence to take on. But it also means that he puts himself in harm's way because he doesn't really register where danger is. And that's one of the things that gets him killed. That's not a spoiler. That's the start of Body Morris 0, is his pride. He can't ask for help. And that is one of the things that he is forced to recognize in Body Morris 0 in order to change, is that he can't do this on his own. And then you see very much, if you read Body Morris 0 and then you read Body Morris 3 and you see how Casey is in Body Morris 3, and we'll get more of it in Grief Eater when you see how the two of them work together 10 years after Body Morris 0. The position at Ralph's side has humbled him a lot, although it has not fixed him from his, this is what I need to do for me, and this is what I need to do for my family. But his family has actually just expanded beyond himself, and so then he uses that upon himself. But he also has learned, if you see, he's learned better how to maneuver around or with the supernatural, because he's been dealing with it for 10 years. So you kind of see those interactions in Body Morris 3 as compared to Body Morris 0, where he also, he's quick thinking, but his pride can get the better of him, which can get him into trouble, and he is unwilling to ask for help from anybody who hasn't proven themselves yet. At that point, Ralph is the only person who has proven themselves, and that's because he is not a threat to Casey. At the beginning of Body Morris 0, the only reason he asks for Ralph's help is, one, because Ralph is his roommate, but two, he's not afraid of Ralph trying to beat him into submission. He's not afraid of being Ralph's bitch, which, it's not Ralph's fault what happens, but going into Boom Boom Boom, I'm only going to talk about Jan and Blake very quickly. One of Jan's strengths is that he is inquisitive, that he is naive, that he is kind-hearted, and he expects the best out of other people. That gets taken to an extreme when he ends up trusting the government against his intuition, because all throughout Boom, you can see him getting vibes off of the government officials that he shouldn't be trusting, or out of the places that he has been, but he's not trusting that intuition, and he's dressing it up because he doesn't want to believe that things are as bad as they are. And and so there's no telling what all they used him for at the time that they had him, but it is that naivety and that sweetness that also comes into play with bringing people together that are so very different. I like to think, I generally think that you get to see more and more of that strength in book 2 when you see Jan trying to cross the gap of the cultural gap between himself and then everybody that is in Blake's life. Because there's a lot less, you would think that they're not in Washington, D.C., so there might be more understanding of the different cultural backgrounds, but there's not. And it's because Jan is so good-hearted that he then tries to cross the lines to bring together people like Blake's father's friends who don't think very highly of of international boyfriends, let's say, or international relations, and people like Alex who also don't think very much about Americans. And so then that is him crossing the bridges because he's friends with Alex and he's friends with Blake or dating Blake. And it brings these different people together. Blake's strength is her bravery. And kind of her creativity. Like, she's not really afraid to stand out, obviously, with the nose piercing, with the blue hair, and she's in this, she's from her stepdad is an ex-Marine who lives in a veteran area in North Carolina. And, she gets along. She's very much like her stepdad. She's much more like her stepdad than her actual dad, who lives in Washington, D.C. as a cable network host. But because she's not really afraid of being dissed on by people, and she's not afraid of being herself because of always having been judged by the politics that surround her as being somebody with blue hair, despite whatever her politics are, then she's not afraid to speak her mind. But then that also leads her to challenge authorities that maybe she shouldn't be challenging. That's why she fled to the country at first a little bit at the end of Boom 1, but it just brings her to stand up to people, though she can't physically fight them. She's not bringing guns into this battle. And so one of the things that you might notice in all of these stories is that they're not all direct, more powerful than everybody else, can't be beaten. There are no weaknesses. Like, even with Gavin, he needs help standing up off the ground at the end of Dead End Drive, and Anna is there to help lift him and support him, which is symbolic of not only their relationships, but also one of the themes of the story, which is you can't do it alone. At this point, Dead End Drive has been out for a couple of years, but if you look at everybody in the book, it is the people who are in that house for themselves, that are living for themselves, that don't have the drive, that don't have what they need in order to succeed. And it is the people that do have that drive for others, for their communities, for their families, that are able to succeed, because you can't live on your own. And that's a theme that continually follows me through my work. Is Bodymore also has that same thing where you can't just live for you. I mean, you can, but I think it's important to have those connections. Then we're going into, from there, we're going to go into some books that are not published yet, with characters that are partially public in different ways to different extents. The first are going to be the Westies characters, because the Westies has a very broad cast of very different characters. I love them for that. I can't wait to share them for that. But we may go through those fairly quickly, they're still quiet. And then I'm going to mention Isabella Bliss, who is from my side secret project I'm not sharing too much on yet, but it's called Predisposed to Bliss. And I'm going to talk about Alan Michael Forrest, who is from Creatures Lie Here, my book that is Silent Hill-ish inspired, and it's at an asylum, and it's I think I started working on that in 2010 as a stage play, and then it turned into a book, and that I worked on in like 2015, 2016, 2017, when I needed a break from Dead End Drive, and I've rewritten it like maybe twice, but it needs a heavy revision. My skills have changed so much since I worked on it, and I need to change like the middle and the end. I like to think it's a neat book. Hopefully it'll be even better once I actually improve the writing. So first, starting out, and there's the king of the Westies, the man that the series is named after, Bill Cassidy. The Westies is the series, The Legend of Bill Cassidy, and the legend is his children, by the way, not his criminal record. But Bill Cassidy was known for his partnership with Silas Miller, and they had a notorious partnership in the West. Until Bill, and Bill was a sharpshooter, insanely attractive. He had his bright blue Cassidy. They called them the Cobalt Cassidys. You'll see the two Cobalt Cassidy twins, Ike and Billy, have those blue eyes that they got from their father that he was known for, and they are striking. And so Bill is going to be what you would consider a fairly on-the-nose image of strength. He had a good personality. He was very friendly when he wanted to be friendly, but he was very brutal when he wanted to be brutal. He was a sharpshooter. He was strong. He was out for himself, besting everybody with his best man, Silas. And that is where the legend started. Now, the legend continued with his retirement and his redemption. Though what you do in your youth never leaves you. Tommy's sense of strength not only comes from his battle know-how, from his willingness to enter battle, but from his smarts, his leadership, because he has always been the leader of his two younger siblings. He has always been the example for his two younger siblings, but also from his courage, where even when he wasn't sure about doing something, he would analyze and follow through. And that is what had given him the ability to actually meet Marcella Bailey, the woman who changed his life, the angel who happened into his life. So Marcella's strength, she's the youngest of the cast in the Westies. And so she's also a smaller girl. And she's also a very cushy girl, like from a cushy lifestyle, because she's from the family of a gunmaker. And her strength actually comes in her courage, where she is going to face down her father and address her father. It also comes in the form of her kindness and her warmth that she gives to everybody. And that's what initially melted the ice around Tommy's heart and gave him another chance at life. However, it is that same kindness that she gives the benefit of the doubt to her father, despite the things that he has said straight to her face, where she thinks that he's just uninformed, where she thinks that he is just scared, where she thinks he's just missing experiences. And so then her strength not only comes from facing her father, but then keeping her emotions together and thinking quickly when she is in captivity from her father and trying to protect her future that she has with Tommy, while she tries to reach Tommy, because she has to make some concessions in order to be able to reach him again. And that includes marrying somebody that she doesn't want to marry and making an announcement of a child that doesn't belong to the man that she is in love with, to the man that she calls her husband. One of the things that I love about Daisy and what her strength is she is very verbose. She is very straightforward with her opinion. She's very loud. She is very courageous, and you'll see courage a lot, because it's just like, but it's courage in different ways. You got to watch how it happens. But she approaches people, and she's not afraid to call bullshit on things because of the way that she was raised by her daddy, to not be taken advantage of, to not be one of those women who would have their stuff taken away from them by a man of that time period, and that she needed to take care of herself. Now, because of her fearlessness, because of the way that she was raised, to not only break horses, but to also not let men break her, she doesn't fit in very well with the other girls in her area. She doesn't have that demure upper class dress, like she doesn't talk like they do, she doesn't really dress like they do, and many of them think lesser of her because she just acts like a weirdo. For all of the money that she has, she doesn't act like a dignified woman. She acts like she grew up in a freaking barn, and she kind of did. But like, if a man did it in that time period, they're like, okay, cool, you are a professional, you are well equipped for your position. And her being a woman, she's not wife material according to them. And so that gives her a hard time socializing, a hard time finding a place fitting in, until, she meets the Outlaws, and then she finds a place that she does fit in. Ike's strength is very unrelenting, very loyal, and very protective of the people that he brings into his family. And that becomes a problem when he is unwilling and unable to see other people who are trying their hardest as people who are trying their hardest. He is very doubtful of people's intentions, even when they say, this is my intention, because he is distrusting of outsiders. And while it's a strength to be distrusting of outsiders and be quick to respond to things, it also stops him from being able to accept new members of the family as they come. And that comes in the form of, Ambrose trying to join the family, trying to court Ike's sister, and Ike not having it, and Ike also quickly making decisions. Ike is also very brutal, and that's great because he can protect his sister with that brutality, with his quick instinct, but it also means that he makes decisions before other people have a chance to know what is going on, and in that case, other people suffer for it. Billy has a form of strength in her silence, in her support. She's kind of like Anna in that way, where she doesn't cause a fuss. She knows that they've been through things and that things are just difficult, and she's got to keep it moving forward, got to keep to herself, and then takes care of people. This silent heartfulness is one of the things that draws animals to her, which makes her not only a good hunter, but that's how she gets her horse, Custard. But then it is also something that draws Ambrose to her, as he sees this gentleness, this caring in the way that she carries herself and the way that she interacts. But that also leaves her very alienated, because her brothers would do the best that they could while they were raising her, while they were taking care of her and taking care of each other as just their small family unit. But that would also often leave her in places alone, where it would remind her and put her back in the place of the trauma of losing their dad and their house being set on fire while they were in the cellar. But because she is this silent type, and she knows that she has to be, because this is just what you're dealing with, then it often goes by the others that the suffering that she is going through and the alienation that she is going through goes unnoticed, and she just gets more distant from the others and has a harder time connecting with other people. So that strength is also the weakness. You cover and help other people, and then you end up losing parts of yourself and losing yourself to this distance. Then the last member in the main cast of the Legend of Bill Cassidy is Ambrose, and he also has a quiet sort of strength. It's also in his wit. So while Ike and Tommy are both outlaws that are both physical in nature, that are both ruffians that'll get into fights, especially Ike is ready to pounce on a mofo. Ambrose is a studied man. He is a man who is trained to be a teacher. He's coming to the West to be a teacher. And so he can't necessarily go toe to toe physically with Ike. And this becomes also an issue when he is interested in Ike's sister, Billy. But it's because of his more gentle, not only his more gentle nature, but his calculating, his smarts, that he is able to watch Ike, to watch how Ike's behavior is, and to put it in a categorization of how he responds to things, that Ambrose is actually able to very easily outsmart Ike and get the better of Ike in all of the situations that make Ike like really upset and kind of self-conscious, because then it causes Ike to feel like Ambrose is going to trick Billy and then run off with Billy, and there's nothing he can do about it because Ambrose will outsmart them all and manipulate them all. And so his smarts both help him learn how to deal with Ike and learn the best way to get around Ike's personality and Ike's defects, but also make him look more suspicious to Ike. What I can tell you about Isabella Bliss is that she is fairly young, and in her youth, her strengths are that she can keep a tight lip, so a lot of people tell her their secrets. And then it's also this sensitivity of the heart, that when she's listening to other people talk about their things, and then she tries to talk about her things, which are specifically like music because she plays the piano. She's a prodigy at piano. Other people don't seem to get what she's talking about. And she starts to feel alienated because she doesn't understand their issues. And then when she talks about like what she cares about and what she likes, they don't seem to understand her. But she's willing to listen, and she's willing to try to understand people, and she just takes people at their word for whatever it is they're complaining about. But then she starts seeing stuff in her life that doesn't reflect the things that other people are telling her. So then she doesn't really know what to believe anymore. And so you could say her strength is in her patience and her compassion and her willingness to listen, but it gets to the point where that compassion starts to be eroded away because she listens and she tries to apply it so much that it doesn't make any sense, because it's also not what she is seeing. And she imagines that if that is how it is, then she should be seeing it too, but she doesn't. And like that kind of goes with, that's not how necessarily it works, but it goes with how her, being a teenager and dealing with certain things, that you're not necessarily going to see the same light that other people see. And then you end up being overburdened with other people's secrets. And maybe you don't feel anything bad about those secrets until other people start sharing your secrets. And then you just feel all of this weight. Like, I have kept this for you and you can't keep this for me. You can't keep anything for me. So then it turns into resentment. Her strength of secret keeping turns into resentment when she realizes that it's not kept the same way. And then the final character that I'm going to mention is Alan Michael Forrest. And he is a very inquisitive. That's his strength, is he wants to learn things, or at least, it's greed. It's greed. It's a very thin line between inquisitiveness and greed, especially when you're a journalist. And with Alan Michael Forrest, he wants the scoop so that he can make a name for himself, so that he can get paid. So drive would be his strength. But this drive causes him to lie, and to lie a lot. And so much does he lie that he doesn't even realize he's lying until it's forced in front of his face. Even when his fiance / it was his wife now, right? Catherine is his wife. Sorry, I've been through enough iterations of this where it was like, girlfriend, fiance, and then I think the most recent version was wife. Um, and she laughs about how he needs to stop lying at some point. And then he realizes just how much he lies, that he writes papers and stories and publishes them about people without actually looking at the stuff that he is writing. It's just that's that's what sells. So that drive fed into his greed instead of feeding into his inquisitiveness and instead of feeding into his interest in society and what's going on. And so he doesn't ask as many questions until the story goes on, and then he starts opening up to what he is saying versus what he should have been seeing because he was refusing to see as he was writing. With Alan Michael Forrest, it's not even just his drive, but that is the thing that keeps him going back when he sees the injustice that is happening, when he sees the lies and the abuse and the fear that he has for the subject of his stories and why he pursues them still. And it gets him into a dangerous position, but that drive is what pushes him to want to do better and to keep asking other questions and to keep finding out what is going on. And so, as you can see, where that would become a weakness is when you push too hard on the wrong thing, when you get too aggressive on the wrong thing, when you're so sure of yourself that other people are going to get along with you if you say this is the thing that is happening because it mattered to you. And then they go, no, I really don't care. That's not what we all care about. And you're like, what the heck? And so those are different strengths, different ways that characters show strength, and different ways that the strength of the character can actually change the story. Because, if not for Tommy's strength in straight pursuit of Marcella when she gets taken away, not only when he runs off with her and pursuing that I want to have this and I want to give her this chance, when she sends him a letter saying, hey, my daddy is trying to put me in this situation and I don't want this. I don't want to marry any other man. I want to marry you. And he goes, okay, these are your choices. You can stay here and marry Christopher, or you can run away with me. That is Tommy's strength. The keeping her as comfortable as she can while going into this completely foreign situation of being on the road, riding horseback where she's never ridden horseback before. Marcella's strength in addressing her father head on who she thought he was and who he isn't, and keeping strong to protect her unborn child. Daisy's strength of character in pursuing what is right and making sure that she is not taken advantage of, and keeping herself strong because she feels like she has to be strong, like nobody else will take care of her because her dad was the only one that did, and when he passed, she's on her own. Ike's strength in taking care of his family, in his headstrongness, in how he thinks fast, in how he's willing to, in the bravery that he has, where he is willing to offer himself up for the benefit of his family. Billy's strength and the way that she quietly cares for others. Ambrose's strength and how he's calculative and observant. And even if he can, see around what somebody's weakness might be by observing their personality, not using it against them. Strength is such an interesting thing. And of course, to go to one of my favorite fictional characters, Majima, if you go to Yakuza 0, where throughout that story, and that's where Hitomi came from, that's how him and Hitomi really bonded, is all throughout Yakuza 0, people are asking him for thing and for thing and for thing. Even Makoto wants him for thing and wants him to do things that violate his boundaries. She asks him to kill for her when he said that that's not something that he wants to do. And even in, I think it's Yakuza 2, where he has the song as long as you're happy, that's how he operates. It's as long as you're happy, I'm going to keep doing, I keep doing favors for other people because they keep asking as long as you're happy, whatever. And he's the manager, or was the manager, of a hostess club, and it was all about serving the customers, putting them, customer is king, right? And so when Hitomi came along, she never asked him for anything. As much as he expected her to ask him for something at some point, she never did. And in the story, not yet written, but also written in parts, the one thing that she eventually asks him for, because he knew that it was coming, but he called her at some point when he was in Tokyo. And she finally says, I do have something that I would like to ask you for, and it's please don't die. And so just the one time after all this time of them knowing each other, and she just gave to him without expecting anything back. And it's that. And so there's this strength in this self-sacrifice, but to the point that you self-sacrifice. And this goes back to Majima in Yakuza 0, where he is so giving Whether it looks like that or not, he is constantly taking care of other people with zero expectation of what to be returned with, to the point that he is left alienated and alone. And you feel it in the way that his story is written. At least I do. And that's a great character. And it's a different kind of strength than Kiryu, who just beats the crap out of everybody. Who, and even Kiryu, who is Fistmaster, right? He can beat everybody. He is the Dragon of Dojima. And I know I bring them up a lot, but you know what? They have had an influence on me. Okay, they have had an influence on me. But Kiryu's thing, he's got the brain the size of a pea, which is hilarious and totally fine. I love his character. But he also tries to solve everything, at least early on, with his fists. He's also very compassionate, which is an interesting combination for him as he gets older. Is he wants to be more of a pacifist, but a pacifist. But he does believe in attempting to solve things with his fists earlier on, and he can because he is the Dragon of Dojima, this myth of a man, this legend of a man who can beat anything. But even he still goes to a point where there are some things that he cannot solve with his fists. And you see that also in, I think, Yakuza 0, when he is beating the heck out of Shibakawa. And he gets so enraged that he is about to kill this guy, and it's only Nishiki that can pull him back from that. And again, it comes back to stories that are about not being able to do it alone, because when you only rely on yourself, and I think that is a big difference between these wish fulfillment stories that revolve around this OP character where everything revolves around them and they got to martyr themselves and they got to do everything, versus the kinds of stories that I like, where your characters have a strength or have multiple strengths, but at the end of the day, they can't do it by themselves, and it is an ensemble or it's teamwork that makes it work. All of my stories do that, and the stories that I enjoy the most have more to do with an ensemble working something out, or a cast of, or a team of characters working together, and less about it being about me and my martyrdom and my strength and my making sure that it's ended correctly in the way that I want. And I love to see that. And I don't think that you can have strength without having it cross a boundary and another character has to pull them back, because that shows the struggle of the character. Anyway, so that was different expressions, different viewpoints on how to visualize strength in somebody, what strength looks like in other people. It's harder to do without doing deep dives into stories, and I would love to, but that would require doing some spoilers on some of these stories. So we're just gonna do some baselines to give some different examples as a whole. What do you think some of your characters' strengths are, and what does it look like when those strengths are taken to weaknesses, or what are those weaknesses? Because I also think of this writer advice that often comes up is trying to make sure that your character has weaknesses to make sure that they aren't OP. But often that's stuff like, oh, she's clumsy, or oh, he's headstrong. But where does that come into the story to show as a weakness that actually affects the plots, the relationships, the outcome of the story that they then have to work around? If it doesn't become a roadblock that has to be worked around or that causes issues in the story, then it's not really a weakness. It's just a superficial flaw. So with that said, let me know what you think. Let me know some of your thoughts. If you are a writer of any kind, whether it's books, visual novels, video games, movies, anything, what are some of your characters' strengths, and what do those look like as weaknesses? Or feel free to answer if you have a favorite character from a book or television or movie or video game. What is their character like? How do they show strength, and what does their weakness look like? Let me know what your thoughts are down in the comments below. With that said, have a great weekend and don't die.
Was that Wayland Cross in the trunk? Do you know, or is that something that's still being figured out?
The person in the trunk was not Wayland Cross. Is he in trouble? We don't know who did it, but as the owner of the car, the longer he's missing, the worse it looks for him.
Cross isn't a killer. For the last couple of years, the average number of murders in Baltimore has been over 300, and it's been going up. Mind you, that's only whatever the badges count as official murder, and believe me, there are people that don't count when they die. Wayland? If you're down here, tell me. I'm not talking to the badges, I've been looking for you. They found a body in your trunk. Why? Did you do that? To the left, plain black letters read along the wall, "You walked in the corridor." Once that ends, "You chose the dark" is on the right. My vision goes blurry, flickers black and black and black for longer intervals until I can't see anything at all. I'm not screaming anymore, but my voice echoes back to me. Where the hell am I? You're dead, Josephine. Even smart people do stupid shit sometimes, right?